Go ahead and try this question. To get really good at SAT and even ACT grammar, you got to get used to seeing the patterns, the arrangements of words, the question types that appear again and again and again. And this question shows one of the more common patterns that you're going to see in the old SAT. So let's check out this question. Initially trained as a geophysicist, John Brockman's philosophical theories offer a new perspective on the problems of epistemology and ontology. So what's the error here? You might read this and say, sounds fine, doesn't seem like there's any problems with it, but there actually is, and it's a very common pattern that once you see it, you'll see it all over the place, often even in hard questions that end up not being very hard at all. And indeed, this is a question that once you see the pattern, you can do it in about 4 seconds, as is often the case in the SAT. So what's the problem? Notice we have this opening modifier, this opening phrase that's describing what someone is doing, right, or what someone has done. Initially trained as a geophysicist. So we're talking about a person here. Right, a person is trained as a geophysicist. But notice the noun that follows up after this opening what's called participial phrase. The noun that follows it is not a person. Right? You might say, well, John Brockman's a person. Yes, he is, but you got to look at the whole noun, the whole subject. The whole subject is John Brockman's philosophical theories, and philosophical theories cannot be trained as a geophysicist. John Brockman can be trained as a geophysicist, but his theories can't. So this is very common error called a dangling modifier. So whenever you see this opening modifier, this opening participial phrase describing someone's actions or the actions of something, you have to make sure that the noun that follows it right after that participial phrase is the noun doing that action. And in this case, it's not. It's the philosophical theory. So once we see this right away, A, B, and C are immediately eliminated because they make the same error. Of course, A is the original. C still has John Brockman's philosophical theories. B flips it around a bit, but notice the theories are still the subject after that opening modifier, so it's still the same error. Whereas D and E lead with John Brockman. So we know our choice is going to have to be either D or E, and now we have to just look at D and E and see which one makes an additional error. So let's look at D. Initially trained as a geophysicist, John Brockman produced theories that offer a new perspective, blah, blah, blah. That looks pretty good. Complete sentence. John Brockman's here. The theories are still here. Everything looks good. Now what about E? Initially trained as a geophysicist, John Brockman, who produced theories that offer a new perspective, blah, 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 blah. Well, the issue here is a fragment. By adding the who and then the rest of the sentence here, we have a relative clause that's describing John Brockman, but the sentence never recovers to go back to the main sentence. You'd have to, if you wanted to have something like E, you'd have to put a comma after ontology and then complete the sentence, right? So John Brockman, who produced theories that offer new perspective, blah, 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 has received the Nobel Prize or something like that. But as written, of course, we can't make that change. E is going to have to go away. And we go with D. So a question that might seem complicated, that might seem a little tricky, might even seem like there's nothing wrong with it when you first read it, actually does have something wrong with it, and it's an error that comes up all the time, this dangling modifier error. So the more you can recognize this pattern, the more easily you can recognize this pattern, the more quickly you'll get this one right, and the more accurate you'll be on questions like these. To learn more about ReasonPrep's SAT, SAT subject test, and ACT video courses, go to reasonprep.com/enroll, and you can find the link in the description below the video.